How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to yet another bass guitar build video. In today's video I'll be showing you how I built this bass guitar right here. It is a hollow body bass, which is very difficult, turned out very difficult to make. It has some very old-timey Gretsch Falcon type pickups inside of it, and it makes for a very beautiful sound when I play it. I hope that you'll enjoy watching the video of me building it and me taking you through every single one of the steps that I went through to get to this end result. And if you have any questions or comments, just leave them down below in the comment section. So yeah, I hope that you'll enjoy watching me build this thing, and I'll see you at the end of this video. For the bass that I'm going to build in this video, I really wanted to challenge myself, as I thought I could do a lot more than I did in my previous bass build, but since it was my first, I didn't want to challenge myself too much. For this one, I also wanted to make the neck myself, and as I've never really done that before, I decided to start out by doing that. I started off making the neck angle, as I wanted to do that because it seemed like a very difficult thing to do, which it ended up not being. I just made a scarf joint in the wood and I clamped it shut and just waited for it to dry. After the neck angle was completed, I needed to figure out how exactly I was going to make my headstock. I decided on a 2 left, 2 right headstock, which means there's 2 tuners on the left side, 2 tuners on the right side. I really liked this design and I saw it on a few other basses and I thought it looked very cool, so I went with that. I also got my chrome machine head tuners. Then I just printed out the design that I wanted the body to have, and I was going to use this later on to trace onto the wood. For the main body of the guitar, I used strips of maple that I glued together to form a bottom and a center and a top. And because I wanted it to be a hollow body, I first made a sort of rim type shape that I could later glue the top and the bottom on top of, so that it would automatically become a hollow body. I just trued up the edge of the rim that I made, and then I decided how I wanted to connect the neck on top of it. Here you can see the basic layout of the bass guitar shape. Now to finish up the neck, there was still a lot of things to do. First things first, I needed to make a groove in which the truss rod would fit. The truss rod is used to adjust the neck angle after the guitar is already completely finished, and you can see it fits snugly into the groove that I made. I used a jigsaw to make the shape of the outline of the neck. Right now I am making sure that the truss rod fits in place perfectly fine, and after I made sure that it does, I am going to be gluing the fretboard onto the main part of the neck. The fretboard, as I said, is going to be out of a very high quality ebony wood, which was very nice to work with. It's super heavy, it's very, very dense, and also it feels more like working with metal than it feels working with wood. I'm using a piece of masking tape so that there isn't any glue that gets onto the truss rod, as that could impair the ability to set up the guitar later on. My grandparents got me a router for my birthday, and so I'm going to be using it a lot for this build. As you can see, I'm using the router right now to true up the edges of the fretboard with the rest of the neck, so that the rest of the shaping can take place later. After I installed the tuners, I decided to reshape the headstock a bit more. The nut that I'm using is made out of bone. I'm using this sanding block with a 12-inch radius that I got from Guitars and Woods. It's a website that sells luthier tools, and I just used a lot of their stuff for this build. It was very nice to use. After I've radiused my fretboard, I am now using a rasp and a lot of sandpaper to finally get the neck shape in order. Later on, I'm going to be still refining it and making it a little bit thinner, as it was a little bit too thick still. After having calculated exactly where all of the frets need to go, I just took it into my shop and I decided to just start sawing the little slits that the frets would fit in. And after I got them all laid out, I decided on an inlay. I was going to use abalone, which is a very nice pearlescent type material, and on the 12th fret I wanted to do an anvil shape, because usually there's a decorative piece on the 12th fret, and as an anvil is also my logo, I decided to incorporate it into my design. For the rest of the shaping of the neck, I covered it in masking tape so that it wouldn't damage any of the inlays that I've already done. And right now you can see me install the first few frets of the guitar. After all of the frets were laid out, I used a little piece of wood and a hammer to kind of tap the frets into place. In a few points I kind of made the slit that I sawed a little bit too big, so afterwards I still went over it with a little bit of super glue so that the frets would not come loose. The frets can be cut to size and then also rounded off at the edges and crowned. As you can see, the maple parts that I used for the top and for the bottom are still very rough and they need a lot of planing before they're ready to go. After I did that, I used a jigsaw to cut them out. The neck is mostly done and it can be attached to the rest of the body right now. I'm using my router for shaping of the bottom and for the top of the bass guitar as well. It was a lot of work to get the curve into it, but as you can see, I just started off by making a rim around the edge, and then using my router, I made a kind of like a heat map of the height of every single part of the curved top, and then I used a lot of sandpaper to get it really nice and smooth. This took ages, and if I were to do it the next time, I may do it differently, but at least it worked out for this build and it looks really nice right now. I'm using my router as well to route out the pickup holes. The pickups will have to slide into this very snugly later on, and the nicer I do this, then the cleaner the bass is going to look overall. This was quite a difficult thing to route out, as the pickup holes were very deep and my router barely could reach to the bottom of it. Here you can see what the bass guitar is going to look like with the pickup holes routed in place, and also I did another one of those heat map things for the front of the bass as well. The backside of the bass can now be glued into place before continuing on with the electronics and stuff, so that I have something to work on. You can see I'm applying the glue very generously. It's very important when wood gluing that you get full coverage of both sides that you're trying to stick together, and it's also very important that you use proper clamping force to get it. For my piece, I used a lot of twine that I wrapped around very tightly, very snugly, as I saw a lot of professional guitar builders also use some kind of thread to make sure that there's even clamping force all around of the guitar when gluing on the top and the bottom. Here you can see what it looked like in the end. And right now you can see I roughed out the top as well, and I sanded it smooth so it looks completely curved and it already starts to look like the final product. I made my custom F-hole design, and right now you can see me drilling out the holes for the electronics and for the pots, and also using my jigsaw to saw the F-hole design out. I have already installed the pots into the front of the bass, and I'm soldering all of the electronics into place before gluing it shut. Here you can see what the electronics look like, and right now I'm going to be test fitting the front of the bass before gluing it all together. Finally, I can glue the front onto the rest of the bass, and after I do this, it's basically playable already, once I string it up and install the hardware, of course. For the front, I used the same exact technique that I used for the back of the bass guitar, and I again just used a lot of twine to tightly wrap around both sides of the bass so that I could get full coverage, even clamping force, and all of the things that I also talked about during the gluing of the back side of the bass. I wanted to do a black binding around the edges, so I again used my router to take off a little strip and make a little groove. Then I just glued the binding into place, and I used a little plane and a lot of sandpaper to make sure that it was flush with the rest of the bass. Looking at inspiration from older bass guitars, I really like the color seafoam green, so I decided to make this bass seafoam green as well. I started off with 3 coats of a clear nitrocellulose lacquer that I could use to seal the pores of the wood, and then I used some sanding paper to make it all flush again. After all of the pores were sealed, I went over it with my main color, so 6 coats of seafoam green, and then once that dried, I scraped off all of the paint that got onto the binding, and I went over it with 3 more coats of a clear nitrocellulose lacquer. after the paint dried, I can get to work on installing all of the hardware, and it was very nice to see the final thing coming together really quickly now. I chose a Warwick bridge, as I really like the two-piece style bridges, and I used black kind of transparent epoxy type knobs. Believe me when I say that I got super excited around this part, as I knew that the bass build was almost nearing completion. I'm really happy with the way the different woods look together. The seafoam green, to my own personal liking, is a perfect color for this type of bass guitar, and it really plays nice with the old-timey style TV Jones pickups. Now the only thing left to do is to finish up the neck and to string it. For the finish of the neck, I use some True oil that's also used on gun stocks. The True oil applies very easily, and if you work it into the wood with a piece of steel wool, it actually abrades some of the wood off of the neck, and then when it mixes with the True oil, it fills up the pores inside of the wood, and then when the True oil dries, it makes for a very, very nice smooth finish. Now, as I'm stringing up the bass guitar, I just want to thank all of you for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed seeing me build this bass, and I hope that you like the end result as much as I do. For only being my second ever bass build, I think I did very well on the playability of it and also on the finish. If I did another time, there's a lot of things that I would have done differently, but for the first time ever trying such a big project, I'm really happy with the way it turned out. And that's basically it for this video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed watching it. If you still want to hear me play this bass guitar, then there's a video up on my channel. It's called Cabin Fever. It is a blues rock song by the Canadian blues rock artist Rainwolf, and I really, really like their music. So I did a cover of it, and it's not that big or anything, but if you do want to hear what this bass sounds like and see it in action, then definitely go check out that video. Thank you guys for watching this video, and hopefully see you in the next one. Bye bye.